Meet Angie. She and her family moved from the U.S. to Portugal. She talks about having the right mentality when it comes to moving abroad.
You come for the beautiful weather and the great food and the people and the culture, and you don't try to make it into something that you wish you had because you left it.
She debunks some common misconceptions.
I think that's a completely false statement. I completely disagree.
While also giving practical tips.
Be prepared to wait.
Even about food.
It can be made out of anything, and I don't ask.
Yeah.
But that's something that I do just like to eat. That's one of my favorite dishes
as well.
She also gives you critical advice about adapting to a new country.
I think it's one of the most important things that we can do as residents of the country that we live in.
Angie, why did you decide to move to Portugal?
So it was really a journey for my husband and I. We were really just looking at going somewhere. We had already lived a couple of different places, and we were looking at moving. We wanted to give our kids more opportunity, especially for university and for career opportunities in the future, and also language. It's important for our kids to experience different languages, other cultures. You know, we always tell our kids, look, if you don't like something, if you don't like where you're at, you're not a tree, you can move.
Great,
you know,
yeah.
We always tell them that. So we wanted to really show them that, like, you can be global citizens. You don't just have to be a citizen of your state or your country. There's a much bigger world out there, and really that's why we're moving.
And where did you move from?
So we moved from Florida.
Okay, so it wasn't like you were running away from anything, you just wanted to get your kids some experience and do something different for yourself.
Yeah. So we have lived a couple of other countries before, and we were looking at doing it again just because we want to make sure that our kids understand the concept of being a global citizen and having a broader worldview. It's funny because we weren't looking at coming to Portugal in the beginning. Portugal kind of evolved as an option for us. We were actually looking at going to Netherlands.
Okay.
Because Netherlands has a great visa for Americans. So we were looking at going there.
Okay,
Yeah.
well then what happened? How did you end up in Portugal?
Really, it came down to the weather.
Okay.
As silly as that sounds, it can make a big difference. So we've lived in Seattle, Washington before, and I struggled with, what they call the seasonal affective disorder. It's a beautiful state. It's one of the most beautiful states in the country, I think. But the weather was really getting to me. I was raised in Florida, so I think I was just used to the sun. And so I say it's in my DNA. The sun is in my DNA, and I need it to thrive. So when we went to Washington, actually my youngest daughter was born there. It was beautiful, and we really enjoyed seeing all the scenery on the days that you could see the scenery.
Okay.
Yeah, so other than that, it was just gloomy. The skies were really gloomy and overcast. So when we were looking at going to Netherlands, it was kind of the same. I was going, honey, I don't think I can survive in the weather. I love the Dutch people, but I just don't think that I can do that day in and day out. I need some sun.
Right.
So really that's how we started looking at more southern European places.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then Portugal was on your radar. Now what's funny is a lot of people will say that Porto is like Seattle, and you landed in Porto. So
Yeah.
what do you think about that statement?
I think that's a completely false statement. I
Okay.
completely disagree.
Okay.
I know people say that, and I'm going, what Porto are you living in? Because look, when it comes down to it, yes, Porto has rainy winters, sure. But in those rainy winters, when the sun breaks out, you'll get a week of sun, sometimes 2 weeks. And I just think look, you still have the sun breaking through. In Seattle, no, it never breaks through.
Okay.
Maybe for 2 to 3 weeks in the summer is when the sun breaks through in Seattle. I know, I've lived there. But in Porto, I'm like, no, there's a lot more sun here. There's a ton more sun. So I completely disagree.
That's good to know, because a lot of people will ask me about that, and I'm like, it's not really like Seattle, but
no, I don't
you
think
see a lot
so
more
either.
of the sun.
Yeah. And I think the winters are rainy, and you have to be prepared for that. but really it's just the winters. Look, we started having a lot more sun in probably April of this year, and like we would never have this much sun in Seattle.
Okay.
At this time of year especially.
So you're happy with the amount of sun that you get here?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so you scratched Netherlands off the list just because of the weather.
Yeah.
And then you saw Portugal.
Right.
And what was that process like for you? What visa did you come in on, and how was the paperwork and everything?
So we did the D7 visa, which is the retirement visa. And I know some people will disagree with, someone our age using that visa, but we own our own business and we take dividends, which is, the primary reason why you would use the D7 visa.
Right. It's passive income.
Exactly,
That's fine.
it's passive
It qualifies.
income. We used the D7 visa, we came over, and to be honest, the paperwork has never stopped. So we are official residents here now, so we have our residency cards, which is wonderful. But honestly, I have been here, almost a year now, a year in August, and I still feel like I'm still doing paperwork.
Okay.
I'm still trying to go through the things, the everyday things that you need to do to live in the country. So it's almost like it's a never-ending checklist, and my checklist just keeps evolving. So even if I get, one task checked off, something else gets added to the task, task list. So, yeah.
So how do you keep yourself from going crazy with this type of bureaucracy?
I just try to understand where I'm at, really. It's really all in my mindset. I tell people a lot of times, wherever you go, there you are. Sure, wherever you come from, things might have been much more clear-cut. You walk into an office, you can get something done that day. Portugal's not like that, okay? And I think that people come with a different understanding, and they're not prepared for the fact that you need to give something at least 3 to 5 times to get it accomplished,
Yeah.
So I will have 5 things on my list to do each day. I will accomplish one of those things. So the next 4 will get pushed to the next day. And then that day's list is now at 9, right?
Okay, yeah.
And it just keeps getting pushed back. So really, look, it's a trade-off. Everybody needs to know that there's a trade-off for living here. You come for the beautiful weather and the great food and the people and the culture, and you don't try to make it into something that you wish you had because you left it,
Yeah.
I don't know how to say that really in the best way. It's like you can't bring the better systems here and force it. That's not how it works. There really aren't a lot of good systems here, and I think that people just need to be prepared with patience and with a different mindset that it's going to take you 3 to 5 times to get something finished and to get something that you need.
Yeah, I think that's key, is mindset, right?
Absolutely.
You can't think it's going to work from the same way as where you left.
Yeah.
It's going to be different, and so you just kind of need to roll with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So you moved with kids. What was that
Yes.
like? How old are they? How are they adjusting?
Yeah, so we actually moved with kids and dogs.
Okay.
And my kids, look, they're doing great right now. We had some bumpy times. When we first came over, they were enrolled in one school and it was a bit bumpy, but now they are on a different educational path and they're doing great. Okay. So it did take a lot of, it's funny because I'm a Googler. I Google everything and I'm constantly looking at options, at reviews. I'm researching a lot. I really dove into what's the best option moving forward for my kids. I think that I have now finally found it, even though it did cost us some academic time for them. One of my daughters is, unfortunately, she's still behind academically due to some of the things that were missing from the school when we first arrived. Now, thankfully, we found a wonderful private Portuguese school that we love, and they are getting her back on track. It's a lot of work for her, but we understand that that's just the cards we were dealt, and sometimes you just deal with the cards that you were dealt. My other daughter, she's doing an online school, now, and it's been a lot better for her as well.
Okay.
So,
because they learn differently, right? So
exactly. You know, that's the thing about kids is, you know, you can have, like, I have 3 children, and all 3 of them have learned completely differently. They've been different types of students. They've had different types of mindsets. And I think that's so important for parents to really understand children are not cookie cutter.
Right.
You know, I wish we had this manual, you know, when they're born, and somebody would hand us a manual and say, follow this, you know, follow this checklist, do this step by step, this is how it works. It doesn't. Really, it's been a lot of like trial and error and finding out what works best for them, how do they learn best, even what types of environments they thrive in, you know? I realized early on that my youngest daughter, she didn't do so great learning, especially when COVID hit. She didn't do so great learning from mom. Okay. She was very resistant, you know? But if you put her in front of a teacher and a classroom of peers, or give her a structured environment, then she excels. You know, where my older teenager, she's the opposite. She's very self-motivated. She can kind of do her own work and kind of move along at her own pace, and she's very happy to do that. But then again, she's a different personality. So yeah, it's really about just finding what works for each child. Because they're all kids are so different, you know?
Right. Okay, so you have one in Portuguese private school. The other is an online learner.
Yes.
Are there any online tools that you use that you really like that your daughter's using now that were good supplements to her actual school?
I can recommend Outschool is a great resource for us. We're Potterheads. I'm sorry, I can't, you know, I can't get around that fact. So my daughter took, actually it was a Harry Potter course focused on herbology. And it was so much fun. My daughter loves plants, and she would grow her own kind of herb garden, and she would grow her own little flower beds at home. So she took an herbology class, and it taught her about home remedies using medicinal herbs that, you know, she could grow or she could find in the grocery store. It also focused on different flowers and how, you know, you could make teas at home. So it was really interactive too. So they gave her recipes, and then she would, of course, it was really great for the active side, because she would then come to me and be like, Mom, I have this shopping list. I need to get these items so I can make this tea, you know?
Okay.
And it was really fun.
But it was all themed on Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a Harry Potter herbology course, and they had some other great classes that she could take. She did an intro to marine biology class as well. She really was interested in marine biology and plant and animal life in the ocean. So that was really interesting for her. They have so many different offerings, and from what I've seen recently, they've expanded even more, you know, and they have pretty much anything a kid could be interested in, they can theme a class around it, which is wonderful.
Yeah, that's great to have that resource. Outschool is an online learning platform that empowers kids ages 3 to 18 to learn on their own terms with the widest varieties of teachers, topics, and classes to suit any interest. So you can use this platform for online learning. And if you would like 20% off your first class, check the code on the screen and in the description. Okay, so moving back to living in Portugal, you've moved around a couple times, or have you found the part of the city that you love or don't love?
Yeah, so when we first arrived, we came to Marrakesh. I love Marrakesh. It's a very vibrant part of the city, but honestly, it was a bit too busy for us. This was our first time actually living inside the city. Every other place we've lived, we've always kind of lived in the suburbs, right? And so we're not really city people. So we have actually moved out a bit closer to Matosinhos. We're actually very close to Parque da Cidade and North Shopping. And even though we're still in the city, I feel like it's quieter, which is nice.
You have a lot more space out there.
Yeah, there's more space. I just feel like it still gets busy, you know, especially during rush hour, but it's not as busy. It's not as noisy, you know, for somebody who didn't grow up in the city. My kids haven't grown up in a city, so They're not used to all of the noise.
Would you say that someone needs a car there, or public transportation is still good?
Public transportation, that's one thing. The metro in Porto is the very best thing I think there is. It's wonderful. The bus system is hit or miss. It's like if you're going to take a bus, be prepared to wait. Be prepared to let 2 pass that say out of service. And then you're going to have to just wait. So if you're going to take the bus at any point in time, I think you just need to have a lot of patience.
Okay.
Yeah.
So true. But then Uber and Bolt are quite affordable as well, if you ever need to do that.
Yes, they are. What I do notice with Uber and Bolt, though, is that during rush hour, you have to give a little bit more time because I don't know, it's like during rush hour, they disappear, or they can take 10 to 20 minutes to get to you. So I found that during rush hour, you have to give a little bit more time. But other than that, they're great.
Not bad, right?
Yeah.
Okay, earlier you mentioned the good food of Portugal. What do you like, or what have you found that you don't like?
Okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I'm a huge Francesinha fan. I know you are too. I know you are too, and I don't know, it's like a heart attack special on a plate, but I love it. I can definitely tell the difference in sauces now. And I'm going, okay, this is a cheaply made sauce. Oh, this is a much better sauce, And I always have to have batatas fritas with it. You have to get it with the fries.
Is there anything that you've tried that you don't like here?
So actually, no. I've heard of several dishes that I just don't want to try because I've heard about them. So,
like tripe. Have you tried tripe?
What is it? It's the soup with the chicken blood.
Oh,
Have you heard of that?
Yes.
And
I forget the name. But
I don't remember the name either, but I've heard of that, and I'm going, I don't want to try that. That just doesn't sound appealing to me. The other dish that I do love, it's one of my favorites actually, and I'm gonna butcher this, and I know that the Portuguese people are gonna say, you're saying it wrong, but I really am working on it because I'm taking classes. It's my LHs that I have trouble with. It's
a hard one.
Yeah, that combination of letters. Alheira.
Yeah.
Alheira.
Alheira.
Alheira. Yeah, I can't.
I like that too.
Yeah, I think it's great. I love the smoky flavor of it. It's the Portuguese sausage, breaded sausage, that, of course, it can be made out of anything, and I don't ask.
Yeah.
But that's something that I do just like to eat. That's one of my favorite dishes.
I do as well.
So, yeah.
Okay, you said that you're doing Portuguese classes, so how is that coming along?
Okay, so I'm an A2 level right now.
Great. I think that you're ahead of the game for a lot of people if you've only been here for just about a year.
Yeah, look, I think it's one of the most important things that we can do as residents of the country that we live in. If we would have been in Netherlands, I would have learned Dutch. I think there's just a responsibility that I don't want people to accommodate me. It's my job since I moved here to accommodate the people who are already living here, right? Mm-hmm. So even though I do still, eventually I have to revert back to English, and they'll see I'm struggling, and I get a lot of, do you want me to just talk in English? And I'm like, estou aprender português, and I'm trying to learn Portuguese, and they understand that, but eventually they'll just see that I'm kind of stuck, or I don't know how to say something, and then they'll ask, do you just want me to speak English? And I'm like, and I feel some different emotions when they say that. I feel appreciative, but I also feel kind of defeated because I'm working so hard on the language, but it is difficult. It's difficult, I think, for native English speakers just because we are not used to having masculine and feminine. We're not used to having to change numbers and genders at the end of the word. Everything declines in number or gender. And sorry, this is kind of drilled into my brain from my professora. And so it's a lot of work. And for my brain, I kind of get stuck every now and then when I'm trying to speak Portuguese, and then eventually I'll just be like, desculpa.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say this, and I'm trying to say it in Portuguese.
But they're pretty good at helping, right? I mean, and they're very kind. That's the thing
Yes.
that's been nice is like as you're learning, they're kind. They know you're
Yes,
learning.
yeah.
But then when they see you struggling, they're like, we can switch if you need
Yes,
to.
absolutely. And I've noticed that a lot. But I am taking the government Portuguese classes. It's a set curriculum where you go through A1 and through A2. I passed my A1 exam and now I'm in A2. And I have 4 weeks left of that, so I'm really excited. But really, it's a lot of grammar. And I feel like it's one thing to know the grammar, but it's another thing for me to be able to go walk into the hospital and be able to communicate with the doctor in Portuguese.
Yeah.
It's something totally different.
Right.
So I do practice every day. I have my one Portuguese radio station that I listen to.
Okay, good.
And so I think it's just, I have to get used to the sounds. It's almost like ear training, in music. It's like, you have to just train your ear to be able to hear the different sounds, the different accents, the way that they're saying the words and the letters. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, will you continue with classes or at least take a break, or what's the plan after
After
A2?
I finish A2, I'm just going to take a break because I feel like at that point it's more learning to speak on the street. Learning to be able to walk into a loja and speak to someone. I think it's more conversational at that point.
Right.
The classes are great, I think, for learning the basics. Learning the articles, the verbs, how to transition the ending of the words. Again, simple things like saying, how are you? What's your name? This is my name. But it's something entirely to learn how people say things on the street.
Right.
So the way you say them in class isn't necessarily what you're going to hear and how you're going to say it
Exactly.
to people on the street.
So just using it out in the street.
Absolutely.
And then you'll get your certificate, and the plan is to apply for citizenship later on?
Yeah, that's the plan. And you know how we plan, God laughs, and I always like to say that, but the certificate is for citizenship, yeah, but really it's not the only reason I did that. It was just because I had first arrived, I was getting, all of my paperwork in place, and I really like languages. I think it's useful, When we were in Mexico, I learned Spanish, and it was much easier to speak to people. Now, Spanish is a different animal entirely, because depending on what Latin country you're from, the word for straw can be a completely different word.
Something maybe you shouldn't be saying.
And something you shouldn't be saying, exactly. So, I don't know. It's like Portuguese is kind of the same way. I think it's useful to learn the language of the country that you're living in. To be able to speak to people. Yeah.
Definitely.
And I might not be perfect, and it's still going to take me, I think, a couple of years to be fluent. But it's something very useful. And, what I love about Portuguese is that it's also a great base language for all the other languages that are Latin-based. Right? So if you learn Portuguese, and this is my youngest daughter, she says, well, Mom, if I learn Portuguese, then I can learn my 5 other languages.
Good for her.
She's like, she has this goal to learn 5 languages by the time she's 30.
Okay.
Yeah. So Portuguese, she's an English native speaker. She's learning Portuguese, through school. She goes to Portuguese school. And then she says she's going to learn French and Spanish, and then, German's her other one.
Okay.
But
that'd be tough.
Yes, and that's not a Latin-based language.
Yeah. But good for her for giving herself that goal.
She's working on it. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, at Expats Everywhere, we believe that living abroad transforms lives. You've lived in different places. How has living abroad and in Portugal transformed you and your family's lives?
It's definitely giving us a bigger worldview, for sure. Look, there's so many cultures, and there's so many ways of living, and so many different people, and it's really important to expose yourself to different ways of thinking and different people, and I just think it's educational, I think if you stay in one place all of your life, I don't think you have the same richness and the same ability to comprehend the world on a bigger scale, So I think that living abroad definitely helps with that. It really opens your mind to the fact that there are different ways to do everything, and there are different ways to be. So yeah.
Well, Angie, thank you so much for chatting with me today.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks.
If you want to learn about the neighborhoods that we talked about, then check out this Porto neighborhood playlist right here. And don't forget to check out the Outschool code in the description below. Now let's get moving.